This is Teresa Green in the Upper Midwest region. Today I'll be doing a demonstration of drawing tracks on the aerial photo and completing the screening form for a new segment during pre-screening. This demonstration will not cover every scenario. So if you come across a specific issue during pre-screening, please reference the interviewer's manual or talk with your supervisor. Here's our aerial photo. In the upper right, we have the county of where the segment is located and the segment number. You can see the segment is outlined in red on our aerial photo. In the lower left, we've got two maps. The map on the right is the county outlined in blue and the segment location within that county. The map to the left is just zoomed in so we can see the roads that are near the segment. In the lower right, we have some administrative data with the segment acres and the latitude and longitude of the center of that segment. Along with our aerial photo, we'll have our screening form. As you can see on the screening form, we have the county that matches the aerial photo and the segment number matches the aerial photo. In addition, the digitized acres located on the back of our screening form are the same digitized acres listed on our aerial photo. So now we're zoomed in on our segment so we can talk about drawing off tracks and completing the screening form. Before I contact any operators, I'm going to familiarize myself with the segment by driving to the segment, any roads that go around the segment, and any roads that go through the segment. Thankfully for this segment, I've got a road on each side, so I'm going to make sure that I drive on all of these roads and make notes of what I'm seeing. I'm also going to drive through all of these roads in the northeast corner of the segment. Once I've done that, I'm going to make a note for myself of the different road names. This will just help me communicate with operators when I start talking with them. This road up here was 590th Street. On the south side we had 600th Street. On the eastern edge is Quartz. And on the western end we had 274th. I'm also going to make a note that I've got a windmill right here. We want to make sure that we don't write any personally identifiable information or PII on our aerial photos. Now that I've got some notes made, I'm going to revisit this area in the northeast corner. All of these parcels or houses are on less than 1/2 an acre. So as I drive through, I'm looking for any obvious agricultural activity such as chickens or horses. As I drive through there, I don't see any agricultural activity, so I can draw that off as a single tract based on the 1/2 acre rule. So I'm going to do my best to just draw the boundaries of that residential area with the houses that have less than 1/2 an acre each. Since that's my first tract, I'm going to start with the letter A. On my screening form, I'm now going to record the information for Tract A. For my name, I'm going to put residences. These are located at 590th and Quartz in the city of any town. And we'll just use XX for our state name. And we'll complete the zip code. Okay. Now that I have that recorded, I'm going to go through the screening questions on my screening form. Okay, so for this particular tract, on June 1, have there been or will there be any crops grown, hay cut, livestock, poultry, honeybees, or aquaculture raised this year? No. So I will continue to go through these questions All of them will be answered no. Since these are all answered no, I have a non-ag tract, so I will complete columns 18, 20, and 20A. In column 18, we're going to record the number of acres inside this tract. This is a good example of using our acreage grid. So I'm going to put my acreage grid over the tract as it's drawn off and do my best to estimate the number of acres in this tract. So on my acreage grid, I have a 10-acre piece right here, so we'll start with that. I've got about 2.5 acres here. And then I'll come down here and do this bottom part of the tract. I've got about another 2.5 acres here. And as I go down, I'm just going to keep adding up the acres as we go. And I come up with approximately 20 acres in this tract. Okay, so I will fill that out on my screening form. Got approximately 20 acres. I'm going to complete this as residences. Does this tract have potential for agriculture before next year? No, and I'll record a 3 here. And then I need to complete a code that best describes this non-ag tract. And I can get those codes from the back of my screening form. We're going to use a 1 for residential. Okay, so I'm now complete with that tract. Next, I'm going to go to this piece right here. And in driving around, I found out that that is a water treatment plant. Again, since it's a non-ag, non-residential parcel, I can draw it off as a non-ag tract. So again, I'll do my best to draw the boundaries of that tract. Since that's my next tract, I'm going to label it letter B. Okay, I'm going to my screening form. My next tract is letter B. It was a water treatment plant. And if I happen to know the name of it, then we'll include that in there. That was at 100 Main Street. Again, in any town, we'll call it State XX with our zip code. And I was able to obtain a phone number for them, so I will record that here. Okay, then I will complete my screening form by using columns 8 through 20A. There's no agricultural activity on this tract, so all of my answers are no. Okay, column 18, number of acres inside the tract. So again, I'm going to use my acreage grid. So I'll start, I've got about 10 acres here using the acreage grid. If I bring this up to the northern part of that, I've got just under 10 acres here. And then I'll need this triangular piece over here on the eastern side. Got a 2.5 here and a 1 here. I'm going to call that 23 acres. So when I come back to my screening form, it's 23 acres. We're going to call it a water treatment plant. It does not have any potential for agriculture before next year. And what best describes this non-ag tract? For this case, I'm going to use an obvious non-ag, code 8. Now that I've got tracts A and B drawn off, I'm going to move to a person that lives in the segment. I'm going to start down here on the south side of the segment. So I'm able to contact that person. We found out is Bob Builder. In talking with Bob Builder, he tells us that he farms quite a large area in the segment, and so we'll draw that off based on our conversation. So Bob Builder farms all of this all the way up to both tracks A and B. Since he is the next operator, I'm going to label him C. I asked what's going on with this windmill here, and he tells me that that is managed by the energy company. And so since that's not his, I'm going to draw that off as a separate tract. And I'm going to label that one tract D. Okay, so Bob and I have a nice conversation. I realize that he's farming in the segment. I've given him a letter, and so now I'm going to go to my screening form. Tract C, we'll write Bob Builder here and record his address, the city and state, and his phone number. He tells me that's the best number to get a hold of him, and that's his cell phone number, so I'm going to make a note for myself here. Okay, so now I'm going to go through my screening questions with Bob. And column 8, on the total acres operated on June 1st, have there been or will there be crops grown, hay cut, livestock, poultry, honeybees, or agriculture raids this year? He tells me yes, he's going to farm that land. I'm going to record a yes here, and my instruction is to go to the questionnaire. At this point, I'm done with the screening form. It might be helpful to, in your conversation with Bob, to get a handle on how many acres he's farming in that segment. And he tells you he's right at 474 acres. So I'm going to pencil that in here in the spine of my screening form, just so I have it when I contact him for data collection. Okay, and if you remember, we drew off the windmill as a separate tract because it's owned and operated by the energy company. There's no need to contact the energy company. We can just record that on our screening form. So tract D, if you know the name of the energy company, you can record that here. I'm just going to make a note that it's the windmill. It's located on 600th Street in that same town. And since this is a windmill, all of these screening questions are going to be no. I'm going to record in my land use the windmill, and I need the acres for that windmill. Again, I'm going to use my acreage grid. I've got some 1 acre rectangles here that I'm going to use, and we're going to call this 2 acres. Okay, that includes the driveway leading up to the windmill and the windmill itself. So we'll call that 2 acres. There's no potential for agriculture between now and next year. And the description for the non-ag tract, I'm going to call it an 8, an obvious non-ag. Okay, moving along on our aerial photo. Next, I'm going to contact the operator here. Again, a resident operator. And find out his name is Fred Farmer. Fred tells me that he operates this rectangular piece here. I'm going to give him my next letter, which is the letter E. He tells me that he and his wife operate this together. So I'm going to go to my screening form. We'll record letter E for Fred Farmer. We'll record his address. Again with city and state and zip code. And again, I will get his phone number. Since Fred told me that him and his wife operate this piece of land together, I'm going to make a note of that down here. Just draw myself an arrow. And his wife is Frances. So I'm just going to make a note that the wife, Frances, is partner. And when it comes to data collection, I can add Frances as a partner to the track questionnaire. Okay, complete my screening form, column 8. The operator did tell you that he will raise crops, so we'll mark a yes there. Again, since the instruction is to go to the questionnaire, during pre-screening we will not have a questionnaire, but we can ask him how many acres are inside the segment that he operates. He tells us that there is 120 acres in the segment, so I'm going to record that there. Okay, when we look at our aerial photo, we can see we have this section along the western border that we haven't contacted anyone yet. Since I'm talking with Fred and he seems very helpful, I ask if he knows who's operating any piece of this ground, and he tells me that his brother Sam is farming that entire piece. Okay, so since it's one person and operating that entire piece, we'll put our tracked letter on the aerial photo and we'll complete our screening form. We could contact Sam Farmer to verify that he is farming that, but at this point there really isn't, and it's not really necessary to contact him since Fred, our farmer for Tract E, verified that Sam will be farming this piece of land. There's no harm in contacting Sam, but it's not necessary at this point. Okay, so I've given Sam letter F. We're going to record his information here. Oops. I get his address from Fred as 333 250th Street, again in Anytown. And Fred had his phone number. Okay. Since Fred was able to tell us that Sam will be farming this land this year, we're going to mark a yes on our screening form. Fred estimates those acres to be about 160 acres. And so we'll pencil that in for now. Okay, if we go back to our aerial photo, we can see that all of the land in the segment has been accounted for. We have tracks A, B, C, D, E, and F. On my screening form, I have tracks A, B, C, D, E, and F. One last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add up my acreage to make sure that I'm close to the digitized acres of 795. When they add up the acres that I've recorded in the segment, I have the 3 non-ag tracts, I have 3 ag tracts, and I add up those acres and they come up to 799. So again, I'm just going to record that on my screening form. Just makes me feel good that I'm close to the 795 acres. For the digitized acres, remember we need to be within 10% of the digitized acres. And so now this segment is done with pre-screening. That concludes the demonstration of drawing tracks on the aerial photo and completing the screening form for a new segment during pre-screening. As mentioned, this was a pretty straightforward example. If you have questions, reference your interviewer's manual or talk to your supervisor. Thank you for your time.